Exactly, 10 o'clock Central Time. So we'll begin right on time. My name is Dr. Charlie Hall, holder of the Ellison Chair in International Floriculture here at Texas A&M University, and I'm delighted to welcome you to this particular webinar in our ongoing webinar series. And we've got a great topic and a great speaker lined up for today. So I'm sure that over the next 46 minutes and 17 seconds, you're going to enjoy and be stimulated by what you hear. Our topic today is weather conservation as a business strategy. Of course, water is no stranger to any of us, and we across the country we have to basically respond to water policies that are being developed in the midst of either water scarcity types of issues and also water quality types of issues. And I'll introduce today's speaker a little bit later, but we've got a great speaker, a very knowledgeable Nora Mullarkey, who is the Water Contracts and Conservation Manager with the Lower Colorado River Authority. And I'll have a little more to say about her in just a second. Now, I'd be remiss if I didn't also mention our sponsors that make this webinar series possible. We have the Southern Risk Management Education Center and also the Texas Nursery and Landscape Association. So a big quick shout out to our sponsors, and thank you very much for making this possible. Now today, whenever you're listening to the webinar, you've got a control panel that's on the right-hand side of your screen, and you can manipulate that control panel in several ways to augment your webinar experience. For example, that little orange arrow that's up the top left-hand side of the control panel. You can click on that and open and close your panel as you need to. For example, you might need to ask a question, and you can type in your question into the box that's in the control panel. And so you just click it just like that, and it opens and closes. Also, if you'd like to make the screen a little bit bigger, you can click on View and click on Full Screen, and then it'll make it a lot larger. Now, if you have difficulties with your computer's microphone and speakers, you can also switch to using the telephone. And of course, we have everyone muted as the webinar started because not all computer systems are created equal. So there is a chance of feedback if we didn't have you muted. So sorry about that, but you can ask questions in the questions box. And if you need to use the telephone, just click on Use Telephone and dial those numbers and click on, when it asks for the audio pin, just type in the audio pin that you're given. Now, as I mentioned, you'll be able to ask questions today, but you need to type those in, and I'll be monitoring those as Nora does her presentation. And if there's a question that I can pop in there, and that I might interrupt you, Nora, to do that, but if it's pertinent to the subject that you're talking about. Otherwise, we'll handle all those at the very end. Also, just a quick note, when we finish up and you close out the session, you're going to be redirected to an evaluation survey. And it'll take you all of about 28 seconds to fill out that evaluation survey. But information is invaluable to both myself and Marco Palma and Mung Mungu, who are my co-collaborators in presenting this webinar series. So it helps us in knowing exactly what types of information that you'd like to see. Now, if by chance you get called away, and sometimes things happen, I know that. So if you get called away, everybody's going to receive a link tomorrow through an email to the recorded version of today's session. So I am recording this, and even if you have folks that haven't seen it and you think would need to see it, you can share that link, and of course that'll be available. All right, so without further ado, let me introduce you to Nora Mullarkey. As I mentioned, she's the Water Contracts and Conservation Manager at the Lower Colorado River Authority, and as such, she and her staff administer a lot of different industrial and municipal contracts, and then they oversee the conservation and drought contingency programs, which obviously has been very important historically in Texas. Albeit this year, you know, it's we know that something is tied to climate change because we've never seen this kind of rain in the spring. I think the month of May was the wettest May that we'd ever had. It's just amazing. So it's taken a little bit of attention off of the drought, even though, ironically, we are still in the midst of drought conditions, as are other parts of the country, i.e. California. So with Nora's experience in both the contract side and the conservation side, she also helps the LCRA and policy development. So I'm going to turn the floor over to you, Nora, and let you kick things off. I'm going to go up here to the change presenter, and I'm going to make you the presenter. And as soon as you click on share my screen, you can take off and run.
All right. Let me get set up here. Can you see my screen?
Now,
all right.
Okay.
Charlie,
yep.
Yeah, can you see it?
We see it. Yep, absolutely.
All right. Very good. Well, thank you so much. And thank you, everybody, for coming into this webinar today. And as Charlie said, we have been in a bad drought in Texas and Central Texas for several years, and we are very fortunate to have had a lot of rain recently. But I just visited California a couple of weeks ago. I was actually at a conference talking about planning for long-term drought, and I can tell you that they're suffering there, and I know several of y'all are, not everybody on this call is from Texas, so conservation as a business strategy is the topic, but it will work both in a drought and without. So I'm excited to go through these slides today, and for some of y'all that are in Texas, please, excuse me if I'm telling you things you already know, but again, some people have not been in Texas, so just wanted to let you know that we'll be focusing on Central Texas. And the overview is going to be about, first of all, talking about the LCRA, which is the Lower Colorado River Authority, and our recent drought. We're going to go through landscape as kind of the low-hanging fruit for water conservation in terms of when governments get into drought and ongoing. We kind of look at that as the first way to maybe cut back on water use, as y'all probably are all very much aware. And then looking at how to turn conservation and really to a business strategy. Some people look at particularly drought as, oh, this is going to be bad for business, but it's at, bad apples to applesauce. Let's figure out how we can make it work and, in fact, be successful. First of all, who is the LCRA? Who are we? LCRA was formed kind of in the same fashion as the Tennessee Valley Authority. We not only have a series of lakes, not just water supply, but we also provide transmission lines. We also have some power plants. Those are some nice bluebonnets there. And we also have parks. This is actually Lake Travis, one of our storage reservoirs. So we do more than just provide water. We don't have any taxing authority, and we're basically, a lot of it is a utility. So some people have wonder about the Colorado River. This is not the Colorado River that serves California. Even people in Texas and even people in Austin, we have to let them know it's actually the Texas Colorado goes through the heart of Texas, goes through Austin. We have a series of lakes, or reservoirs, but they're called the high lakes. We have two major reservoirs that are our storage reservoir, Lakes Buchanan and Lakes Travis. And so that's, even though these other lakes do have water in them, the big reservoirs that we use for water supply are those two. So the drought. This picture is Lake Travis in 2011, if you remember the one you just saw. This is called Sometimes Island, but it became Sometimes Peninsula. And this map on the right is the Drought Monitor that was from October in 2011. And for those in Texas, we all remember that year. We had 90 days of over 100 degrees. It was the hottest and driest year ever for Central Texas, for our basin. California, I looked at a map of the drought map there, and their map unfortunately looks about like this right now. So this is where we were at 4 years ago. This graph shows our combined storage of those two reservoirs, and some real important things is this red line at the bottom. That red line was something we really never wanted to get below, because once we hit that 600,000 combined storage, our full, or quote full, is 2 million. So you can see we actually got above that in 2007. But when you hit that 600,000, it kicks in a whole other series of state mandates. We have to do pro rata curtailment of all of our firm customers, meaning a minimum 20% cutback. We were there nearly several times. We actually started the drought in 2008 and 9. We got some rain, bumped up, and then in 2011, as I said, we really cratered. We had been providing water to our rice farmers, but at that point, the farmers were cut back. So for 4 years, the irrigation division had no water. And yet, as you can see, we were rocking along until this past May, and we bumped up and started getting some water back in the lakes. But we're not full yet, as you can see. We're not even this time. Another way to look at this is the inflows. And you can have a lot of rain, but you don't necessarily have it in the right places. And a lot of lines here. I won't get into this too much, but as you can see, the blue line, the light blue line, is what the average inflows were to those lakes since 1942. And until we have this big yellow line, this 2015, May of 2015, we got 400,000 combined storage, which was huge. The average in May was only about 200,000. But as you can see, throughout all the years in 2011 through up to 2015, we had very, very low inflows. So even though we were cutting back, you got to have water coming into the system. So let's switch now into landscape as a topic for conservation. Where is it we say you can save water? Well, the Water Development Board, the Texas Water Development Board, did a survey in 2012, and they looked and said that about 30% of all the residential water use in Texas goes to the landscape, and in fact 60% in the summer. So that little graph there is how these utilities have to meet that demand, that peak demand. So in terms of curtailing water use, it makes sense not only from a drought one, but also from a conservation. If you're trying to build to be peak demand, we've got to figure out how to maybe slow that curve down or drop it down a little bit so it's not quite so high. Robert Glennon, who wrote a book called Unquenchable: America's Crisis and What to Do About It. He's an expert in water. He put together a book in 2009. I recommend it, but this picture comes from there. Lawns in the United States. If you look at it and laid it on top of a map of the U.S., the size of those lawns would be greater than those 5 states combined, and they use a whole lot of water. Excuse me. We talk about water, billions of gallons is a lot, but in utility language, we use acre feet, which is 1 acre for 1 foot high, so that's about 1/3 of a million gallons. So a lot of water use in the lawns and water use. And so when people start saying, well, should you be watering crops or should you be watering lawns? I don't like to have that kind of discussion. I think it's a lose-lose situation, but unfortunately that seems to happen when you get in a drought. So what are some factors in terms of becoming more efficient in watering in the lawn? The American Water Works Association did a study several years ago, probably 8 or 10 years ago now, but it was interesting information. The people that drug their hose draggers that had the hoses that just, the sprinkler was on the end, they used about 22 inches a year, and this was cities throughout the United States. It wasn't one city in particular. Automatic irrigation systems use 37 inches per year. Big difference. And another thing that was concerning at looking at it from a utility planning for the future is that 80% of new homes are installing automatic sprinkler systems. They're kind of becoming one more item to add. So why is it so much higher? Well, several reasons. Really, first of all, the system design, if it's not designed properly, sometimes they'll not put in enough heads. The spacing is too far apart, so people tend to overwater just to try to reach an area that they will never reach. The controller is very confusing, and the lack of knowledge with customers. It's somebody that puts in that system may put it in and then kind of set it and forget it, so you use a lot of water there. Leaks are a big deal. These systems run at 5 in the morning, and people don't always see that maybe a lawnmower mowed over that sprinkler head and now it's spewing water. And then finally, high pressure. This is something that a lot of people don't recognize, but it can waste a lot of water. This picture is a overpressurized system. And I'm not an expert I'm not an irrigator, but I have staff that are, and they can waste a lot of water. That water is going up to evaporation. For every about, if you rule of thumb, for every 5% that the pressure is over, you lose about 6 to 8%. So if you have a system that's overpressurized by 25%, you could lose 35% of the water to evaporation. Another thing real important, and I'm sure y'all are very familiar, is you need to have you need to have that great soil to grow your plants in. And in Central Texas, particularly west of town, we have a lot of limestone. And we usually, this is the, if you can see that soil, we got about, a couple of inches of nice soil, and then it's all rock. And so what has traditionally happened is that the builder will bring in this soil that's kind of red clay death. And in fact, these adobe bricks, I kid you not, when my daughter was young, she had to do a project to make adobe bricks, and I found out you just needed to go get the local soil that's put on landscapes, mix it with dried grass and then put it out in the sun. So you put that on top of rock, and then you see and you water it, and this is what happens. You get runoff, and you don't have it. You're never going to grow very well that turf. You have short root systems, and you have to water more. So trying to put in the best soil, and if you're in some areas, you don't need that. But so the response now from utilities, a lot, governments have been looking at all these things, and they're starting to put in some different restrictions. Water schedules. In Texas, Austin, Dallas, and several Highland Lakes communities now have permanent water schedules that you cannot water more than twice a week. We're finding that's probably, if you have the efficient irrigation in soils, that's probably okay. No midday watering. Picture on the right, water in the middle of the day, that's just not a good thing, and I think most of y'all know that. And then no water waste. We can't have this kind of runoff happening, and these communities have people that are out enforcing these schedules all the time. In Texas, several cities have been adopting irrigation standards probably the past 5 years, and I think a lot of this has been brought on by the drought, but I think there are some smart decisions. Austin now requires smart controllers on all commercial systems. The city of Frisco up in Dallas area also does as well. I think that probably soil moisture sensors might be a little better, but what they're doing is they're asking people to put something on the system so that it's not overwatering and just coming on without at least taking the weather into account. The city of Allen, also north of Dallas, is requiring drip irrigation in beds. The state of Texas is one of only a handful of states that requires a licensed irrigator to install systems unless you put it in yourself. It's Chapter 344 of the State Water Code. If you wanted to get into that, you could, but cities over 20,000 have to adopt these standards, and water districts can adopt them. There's a lot of different things in them, but they have, first of all, you have to leave a design plan with the homeowner. That's real important. And some other things, you need to zone by plant needs. You can't put in an irrigation system that waters grass on the same zone as a shrub, for example. So these have come in they came in I believe 2009, and more cities have adopted them and are now enforcing them. Another interesting bill that came in 2011 was a Xeriscape law, which I think is kind of interesting. Xeriscape, that term has been totally misused, but how they defined it was using drought-resistant landscaping or water-conserving natural turf. And again, water-conserving, somebody told me it's not the plants that waste, it's the people. So, they'll take water. But that said, the goal of that was homeowner associations, property owner associations were outlawing or saying you couldn't put this stuff in. You have to have wall-to-wall grass. So now property owner associations have to allow this, although they can set landscape standards. You can't just have a ugly landscape and call it, totally unmanaged landscape and call it a Xeriscape. Texas cities now are also adopting standards. San Antonio, you can only put in drought-resistant turf grass, and they're limiting the size of irrigated landscapes. These large green spaces, they're not allowing anything over 10,000 square feet. So this really is more for larger homes that have big landscapes. Georgetown, Texas, just north of Austin, they are also adopting drought-tolerant plants. St. Augustine only in the shade, and for y'all that live outside of Texas, St. Augustine is really great for the shade, but it doesn't really work in the sun here. They also have irrigation landscape limits, and they now have the 6 inches of topsoil. So a lot of communities are adopting this more and more. So with all these standards and these things happening, how can you turn this conservation into a business strategy? I want to give two examples before we talk about the landscape and nursery industry. The first is the development industry, the developers and builders. West Cypress Hills is a beautiful community just west of Austin. And these homes, of course, that's a model home that's just kind of designed, but the picture of the landscape or the hill country is right there on top of the hill there. It's a beautiful area west of town. It was started building in around 2008 or 9, and they started putting in your kind of traditional landscape. They put in that soil, the red death soil. They minimum. They did wall-to-wall turf. They just put in an irrigation system the cheapest possible. And then in 2010, we had that blip. I think 2009 and 10 on that graph you saw, there was a big rain event that happened. It was kind of like the rain bomb, we call them around here. And it was a huge mess in that development, and a lot of turf and a lot of soil and everything ran off into a creek. And the state came in and said, you've got to mitigate this. It was a real pollution, water quality issue. So the developer came to us and said, please help us. We need to do something. Our water quality folks got with them and worked from a larger development standpoint. And one of my staff went out there and worked with them. And the developer's name is Hank Smith, and said, you need to put in soil. You need to do the things we've talked about with drought-tolerant turf, put in drip-in beds. Let's do some things right. Well, they started doing that. And in 13 and 14, all of our customers, the drought had gotten so bad that they had to go to once-a-week watering. And Hank called me up about a year ago, and he said, you know what, Nora, those homes that we've put these landscape efficient measures in, those homes are looking great. They're thriving on once a week. We have got to figure out a way to get more builders to adopt this, which I thought was just great, because a builder came to me and said this, and it's not about government imposing it. It's about these folks believing in it. So, and he also recognized that these communities were putting in standards and they were not all consistent. So he thought it's going to be better as a home builder in Central Texas, since they build in a lot of different utility system areas, to have some consistent guidelines. This slide shows you the front of their new guidelines. It just was rolled out about 2 months ago. And some of the main things in there are the things we've talked about: meet state standards, use drought-tolerant plants. I think it's very interesting that they decided to adopt a limitation on turf of no more than 50% of the landscape, or no more than 7,000 square feet. You can put in mulch, you can put in play areas. I think there's a recognition that turf is appropriate to play in, but you don't need it just whenever you're mowing it. So they have actually had several builders adopt this. And are putting on more workshops this fall. So I think this is they're realizing that this is something that can sell their home. And in fact, Hank told me that some of the homeowners that did not have this in their landscape in that West Cypress Hill started complaining to him and saying, why didn't you put this in my landscape? My landscape's not working. So they're looking at this as a business strategy. Golf courses are another strategy that golf courses have figured out. They need to use water conservation as a strategy in business. And in fact, they are looked upon, as you can well imagine, in a drought in particular. Everybody looks at those beautiful, long areas of turf, those fairways, and they think, oh my gosh, what a waste, right? Well, in fact, the Golf Course Superintendents Association of Texas have been working hard and have now put together a they have a thing on their website for current measures, for short-term and long-term improvement plans. They've come up with cost-benefit analysis for different measures, and they've really worked with their members to adopt best management practices. It's pretty much witnessed in in 2013, we surveyed our customers, our golf course customers. We actually have about 30 to 40 golf courses we serve raw water to. And of those, 11 of them said they upgraded their irrigation systems or pumps this past couple of years. 9 customers are now using ET data for their golf course, and more want to use it. It's really a matter of cost. And then 4 customers are permanently decreasing the irrigated area of their fairways. Uh-oh, I'm sorry. What did I do here? I need to return to the previous page. I did something wrong here. I think I just clicked on a link. Hang on a second. Are y'all still there, Charlie? There we go. Okay. So here we go. Hidden Falls Golf Club. They are one of the golf club customers, and I want to kind of direct you what this orange part is. What their goal was, they wanted to save not just water, but labor, fuel, and fertilizer. And so their superintendent looked at areas where they might be able to take turf areas out of play. And the orange areas are what the superintendent looked at. It was about 10% of all the turf. They just looked at it and they said, maybe this is right, but let's verify this. So they worked with the U.S. PGA, their education association, and they actually borrowed some GPS trackers. They had 10 of them, and there were 120 golfers that actually put them on their shorts and walked the course over 2 weeks. And when they overlaid that with the turf areas, what they found is they could actually remove most of this, and it was verified, and they realized that most of the time these people weren't even on these areas. So they removed them out of play. They no longer irrigate them, and they're saving about $40,000 a year. So this is an example where it was pretty much a win-win. It helps the golf course to save money, and also helps with the players. They don't need it there anyway.
But
so
golfers like me, Nora, let me interrupt for a second. If there's any golfers like me, we appreciate the fact that there's not that high grass in the out of bounds areas. It makes it easier to find our ball.
Well, I'm probably one of those 5% of the ones that end up going in the woods, because you know, I've told my husband I can hit 72 on a 9-hole course very easily. So anyway, I love golf, and you know, the golf course, unfortunately, they get kind of a bad rap. I think they really try to do their part to, and they need to. It's a business, and they need to not use water. They don't need to waste it. So for the rest of this, I just want to talk a little bit about the industry, and maybe this would be a time if anybody has any ideas, or after I kind of finish this discussion, that if anybody has been doing things to help promote water conservation in your business, I would love to hear it. In Texas, this is a great opportunity to promote native and adapted plants. I know a lot of people probably do that, but with the rain now coming in, everybody's ready to start planting now. I know I'm seeing my neighbors put stuff in, and this is the time to go help them decide what to put in. Also, diversify your products. A lot more people are asking for rain barrels, rainwater harvesting. That's something that, the rain barrels are really more, I don't know how much it really saves, but it certainly helps the plants, and it's a kind of a gateway to conservation. People like to do this, makes them feel good. Drip irrigation, like I said, that is a huge area for, if you don't carry drip irrigation products, it's a good thing to do. It would be something you would want to consider. Be your customer's water conservation expert. I am amazed when I see surveys. Here's an example of a survey that was done by the University of Indiana last year to 1,100 participants. They just said, hey, what's the best thing you can do to conserve water? These are the results. Take fewer showers, take shorter showers. That was the biggest thing, take shorter showers. Water your lawn less was only 4%, and getting rid of lawns or switching to water efficient plants was 0.5%. I bet that was done in Indiana. It wasn't done in Texas. I think that probably those numbers would change. But the key thing is that we know that showering, we have efficient shower heads, and a family of 4 uses only about 1,200 gallons of water showering every month, whereas they can irrigate a landscape, they can use 20,000 gallons or more. So our customers need to understand, and this is an opportunity for the nursery industry and the landscape industry to teach them. Teach them about how much that water they use. That's number 4 here. What are the water needs of those plants? They really need to put more water is better. the best plant for the best place. I go into nurseries and I look for plants, and I go and it says, you know, you put this in the sun or shade, but it doesn't really tell me a lot about the soil. It doesn't tell me how to group them. It doesn't tell me, you know, how big it grows. There's a lot of opportunities to really have classes that can show, you know, how to put this all together. How much mulch do I need? You know, okay, compost. How do I use that? And then again, pruning and maintenance. I have no idea. I have a lot of, I put in a side jar with all drip and native and adapted plants. And my neighbor helped me. She is an irrigator and a landscaper. But now I'm looking at it going, well, when do I prune it? When do I maintain it? What do I do? So that's an opportunity. And then, as I said, drip irrigation systems are real important. The TNLA, which sponsors this, I don't know much about your industry, but I did go online and look, and they did a survey with AgriLife about 6 or 7 years ago, and they asked several hundred nurseries, what are y'all are adopting as far as best management practices, and what are you maybe not doing as much? And it looked like there was a whole laundry list, but a real high level of adoption where y'all are, you know, grouping your plants with like requirements. And you can read this, you're doing some really good things, but some things that could be improved upon, and again, I'm not sure if you need drip irrigation in 1 to 5 gallon containers, but nobody was doing that. A big deal is a water efficiency audit, just to see where you can save. If you haven't even looked to see where you're saving, then you don't really know. A lot of y'all are capturing and recycling the irrigation system water. I also read that there could be some issues with that. But again, if you can just perform an audit on if you're growing plants, or even if you're retail, how are you using your water? It's just a good way to start and see if you're being efficient or not. And then finally, the TNLA has a new program, the Texas Water Smart Certification Program. I think Charlie can probably talk more about it. They only rolled it out in March, and they've got 10 people certified. But it really, if you can think about educating your employees and going through this, so they're learning about all these different concepts, I think that's going to be helpful to your industry as well. So I'm going to close this up now, and we can take questions if you want. This is the Drought Monitor at the end of May in Texas. It looks much better, and in fact, I think the newest one's probably hardly got any drought in it. And but our water industry, this is what we call the hydrological cycle. We start in drought, we get concerned, and then we get more drought and more drought. And you know, by last year, we were pretty panicky around the state, and then it started raining, and boy did it rain. And so now here we are at a hydrological cycle, and we don't want to go back to apathy. This is a time to keep moving in conservation, but I just think that's amazing. We call it the hydrological cycle. Yes, Charlie,
No, I was just saying that makes a lot of sense, the hydrological cycle. And I was going to give just a quick example of that. Back in 2007 in the southeast, in the state of Georgia, the governor declared a water moratorium on all new landscapes. And of course, you know how long a landscape will last without any water. And that promulgated the collapse of Pike's Nursery in the Atlanta metro area that had, you know, over a couple of dozen outlets. And when there's no more water and people can't water the plants, obviously they didn't sell a lot of plants, and then they went out of business, and then the dominoes fell, and 31,000 jobs in the green industry alone were lost in the state of Georgia during the drought. Fast forward 18 months when Lake Lanier is full, nobody's really concerned anymore, because we have plenty of water, and they really didn't implement water policy change when the tires were hitting the pavement and you had the crux for change. That didn't occur. So I like your example there of this hydrological cycle, and you're right. We can't afford to go back to the apathy stage. We've got to be concerned and develop water policy, in my mind, that's both realistic and beneficial to all parties.
Yes. Yeah, in fact, I've heard the saying in Central Texas that we are in one continuing drought interrupted by floods. And Texas is growing a lot, and I think we've all realized that, whether you're having droughts today or non-droughts, we're growing and we need to be able to serve more and more people. So, we've become limited in our water, and we need to be efficient in how we use it.
Yeah.
One other thing, I think, Charlie, you mentioned Atlanta. The folks I know in the golf course industry here, we actually held a workshop and brought in someone from Atlanta. I guess this was in 2011. When they had their drought, the state came in and said that the golf courses had to cut 95% of their water use. And so they got on board and did best management practices, and they got it down, not quite to there, but of course I'm not sure where they're at now. But it was pretty draconian, I think, quite frankly. But it got them to sit up and do something. So anyway, with that, the last thing I wanted to show y'all, here's some helpful websites. I hope y'all can see that yellow. The Lone Star Golf Course Superintendent Association of America, their guide, it's there. The Home Builder Association, their new guidelines, they are not on their web as of today, but I've been told it's going to be on there in the next month. They're upgrading their web system. And then finally, that certification program, and I would think that this would be good for anybody, not just Texas, but it's at this link to that website. And so that's my presentation if y'all have any questions.
Well, actually, that was fantastic information, Nora, and we do have a couple of questions. Let me start with these and just remind folks that if you got a quick question, go ahead and type that in the question box. We've had a few already, but if you have any other burning issues that you want to address today, then go ahead and type those questions in there. So, Nora, let me start. You had mentioned the Water Smart program and the fact that there's about a dozen folks or so that are already certified. The question was here, how do we best utilize that as a means of differentiating ourselves against other businesses?
That's a good question. I think that's probably something that the TNLA probably needs to explore themselves. I think that if we knew more about it from a utility perspective, to me, I just learned about it. I think it would be good to, and I've talked to somebody at TNLA, it would be good to perhaps have them come talk to some water folks. We have a water advisory council at the state. If we started finding out that we recognize this, it would be something that we might say, just in terms of telling the public, hey, make sure that there's a TNLA certified person at this business. They can help you out. I think the TNLA, it might be good for them to put it on their website. I know that some communities like Austin will put on, they'll say if you're Water Smart certified or you're WaterWise certified, you might look for these guys. So that could be a way to do it.
Yeah, let me just put in a quick plug. There's going to be some Water Smart discussions at the TNLA Expo this year in August. So if you're I don't remember where this question came from, but if it was from a Texan, you can go ahead and go to the TNLA Expo in August in Dallas, and you'll learn more about this Water Smart program. Okay, so the next question was it was a rain barrel question. In fact, it was in the state of Colorado, they have outlawed the use of rain barrels. Do you think we will ever develop such a myopic policy in the Southwest?
It's interesting. I think it's in Colorado, and I think in California too. There's some that call it state water, that once it hits the ground, it's state water. I don't think you're going to see that, at least in Texas. We're pretty much, private property, and it's pretty much been, if it hits the ground and it's not your home, it's one thing. But if it's on your home, then it's your water. So it is very interesting. It kind of doesn't really make sense to me. If you're going to, there is a difference between building a huge pond and stopping up a creek. But if you've got it coming down from you before it hits the ground, if it's coming off your roof, then to me, I think that it's kind of crazy not to consider it something as to use it on your property or use it on, right on your landscape. So, or indoors. People use it indoors too. So.
Exactly. And it just popped in my mind, Nora, and I can't believe I missed this. So I think you and I both are going to be on the panel for an irrigation business workshop in Austin in January.
Yes,
Yeah, I can't believe I forgot to mention that. So again, if you're in Texas, you have a chance to come and participate in that irrigation business workshop.
Yeah.
All right,
yeah.
here's another question. Do you see cities implementing rebate programs similar to Las Vegas or in California to incentivize people to remove grass and replace with native turf or synthetic grass?
I see that in California right now, and I see that in, but the city of Austin actually has something like that. But I don't think you're going to see a lot of that. I don't. I have a question, quite frankly, about the rebates. You can put in drought-tolerant plants and rip them out if you don't have good soil or you don't have good irrigation systems. Again, the plants don't waste water, people do. But some places do it, but I think unless you can show savings, I'm not sure. I've seen it in Arizona, I've seen it in Nevada, and they've got a lot less rain than we do, quite frankly. I mean, we still have, you're talking about 8 inches of rain in Las Vegas. That's a lot different than 30, 35 inches in Central Texas. So, we're not saying don't use grass. We're just saying maybe, put it, the right amount or something. So.
Yeah. Now, let me also address that, and that I think it's imperative on the part of the industry to convey the benefits of flowers, shrubs, trees, and turf grass in terms of 3 areas. The economic benefits, because we know that at least for residential homes, that a good landscape adds $1.09 for every $1 invested in that landscape. So there's tremendous economic benefits as well as to businesses. And then there are a number of ecosystem services benefits that when we quantify the mitigation of stormwater runoff and those kinds of benefits, it adds up to several millions of dollars. And then I haven't even talked about the health and well-being benefits associated. Flowers, shrubs, and trees, and turf grass, etc. So I think it's imperative for the industry to convey the monetary value of those benefits, which then obviously adds a new dimension to the water policy debates. When you had the state of Georgia, the governor realized the substantial loss and the millions and millions of dollars in the ecosystem services alone that the plant material benefited, then there wouldn't have been those kinds of dramatic water policy changes all at once. So we need to recognize the benefit side in addition to the cost side, so we can make more informed policy decisions.
I do think that you're and this is where the Nursery and Landscape Association, if you can direct your homeowner or your builder to say, don't put that grass out there on the corner where it's sunny. Put in some beautiful flowering plants that look nice. Put the grass in the backyard where the kids play, and then we don't have to start talking about ripping this stuff out. Just put it in the right place.
Yeah. Yes. Another question was, here in the Woodlands we have, which is the Woodlands, Texas, for those outside Texas. Here in the Woodlands, we have the WJPA, who has an audit service for residents, the WISE guys, who provide an audit for irrigation systems. How different is a water efficiency audit from this, and what other components does it take into account?
The water efficiency audit and I know the WISE guys, they've gone out and done, hundreds and hundreds. Their focus is really on a residential and I think even commercial, but they go out and look at a landscape and they'll look at the irrigation system and look at some of the things, quite frankly, how it's set, how much it's watering. So it's really looking at the irrigation system on the property. So the water audit that we're talking about for your industry would be more just, again, looking at how you use the water and if you can be efficient, not with just your irrigation system, but also, where you're watering. So I don't think they go into businesses like this, but you could always ask them. They might. But those guys are licensed irrigators, from what I understand.
Yeah. Now, another question is, when all of our lakes were at their lowest levels, why didn't we go in and dig them deeper to hold more water?
Oh, well, geez. Well, first of all, it's very, very, very expensive. If you look at the cost benefit of, going out and dredging a lake, it's up there like in the millions of dollars per cost per acre foot, or thousands and thousands. So then the second part is, where are you going to put the stuff that you dig out? You know, that nobody wants that. It could have lots of pollution, lots of things. So I don't think that was really something that was looked at too much. And I think people like to say do that, but a lot of difficulties in that whole thing. So.
Okay, and then another question was, is there a potential for creating incentives and or rebates for utilization and installation of smart water technology?
Yeah, actually, there are more people doing that. As a matter of fact, LCRA has a rebate for soil moisture sensors and for pressure regulating spray valves, and we're working through our wholesale providers. But there are, some people have the smart controllers too. I think there are more and more, there's a recognition from the water side that we're really looking at the water side. We want to make sure water is used efficiently, and so I think there are some more opportunities in that area.
Awesome. There's a couple more questions, but they're related. Will this webinar be sent out to viewers? And I know there were some folks that signed on a little later, and the answer to that question is, of course, yes. The webinar is being recorded, and that's going to be sent out tomorrow. There will be a link from the GoToWebinar system that will contain the link to the recording. So be on the lookout for that. And as I go through the questions, I think we've addressed all the questions. So with that, Nora, let me say great job. It's a fantastic information. And thank you for all the attendees who participated today. And let me just remind you that you'll be taken to an evaluation just as soon as the webinar is concluded. Please take the 30 seconds or so that it'll take to fill out the evaluation, and we appreciate that very much. So Nora, great job. Thank you again.
Thank you so much, Charlie. Appreciate it.
All right. And folks, we'll see you on the next webinar, which will be in July, and you'll be on the lookout for another notice about that. So thanks again for showing up today, and we'll see you soon.